Good morning, everybody. So glad to see your faces, to have you here with our chapter 2 of The Gap in the Gain. I reread this chapter last night and I was like, let's just underline it all. But to start off with, who's feeling that you're seeing examples of the gaps in your life, where you're thinking in the gain, where you are catching yourself thinking in the gap, just by knowing the analogy? It's just, to me, it's like it's everywhere, right? Like you see it in so many examples. You see it in other people's conversation. You see it in yourself. And so today, let's dive into chapter 2. And again, this is a book study of where it's not me presenting, it's you guys sharing your takeaways and your examples. So do not hesitate to unmute and to just share what you feel about a certain piece. So let's get started. Be self-determined. Define your own success criteria. Define success on your own terms, achieve it by your own rules, and build a life you're proud to live. And he talked about the senior getting ready to graduate from school. And I felt like I once had a senior like that. It reminded, didn't it, Sheila? Didn't you think of that?
Oh, 100% I thought about that. I've always waited to be picked my whole life. I was never picked for anything. All my friends were so into sports. I was never academically that great. I always felt like I was never picked. And I was like, oh, so actually I have in many ways, without even realizing like the concept of gap and gain, created my own level of what I believe success is for myself
Mm-hmm.
outside of all of their criteria. So oftentimes in ways we do these things for ourselves without even realizing it. It's good to acknowledge it though, because that acknowledgement is like, wait, I did that.
Mm-hmm. Awareness is so key. That's true. I like how he talked about how, like, the schools, the education system in general is designed to actually live in the gap. And then when you look at kids and how they struggle, no wonder they don't feel encouraged. Hey, like, it's just our current system of teaching kids to sit in straight rows and obey instructions isn't a coincidence. It was an investment in our economic future. The plan: short term child labor wages for long term productivity by giving kids a head start and doing what they're told, instead of teaching them to live in the gain of what they're good at or what they can do and let them expound on that, right? Very interesting. Share your thoughts on that.
Because if they had a ton of free thinkers, they would have a ton of people changing things in the world. Can you imagine? Like people who would like buck up and say, this isn't happening. I'm sorry. If we had more free thinkers in the world, Canada Post would not be being Canada Post right now. We wouldn't have these problems. But just like in the COVID years, people just rolled over and died because they're used to following the rules. They're used to just doing what they're told. All these, I was like, this is so cool. I really enjoyed that part.
That's where the quote of "I'm just doing my job" comes in, because people are okay with it not being morally correct, or even, what's the wording a person would use?
And because we've created such a prison out of our lifestyles. Well, I have to because I have to feed my family. It's exactly what they wanted if you really think about the whole big picture. Um, I remember somebody once explained to me they took away legal slavery and just created a different form of slavery in that you are taxed to the nines. You are required to work morning to evening in order to be able to survive. Like it looks like freedom, but it's freedom with all these rules. Whereas if we were now living the way they did when they came to Canada or came to the US, where they were living on their own terms, they were able to choose what they wanted and do what they wanted. And Not everybody's going to agree with that, but I do feel like all of our tax and all, it's just another form of legal slavery. That's all it is. It keeps people in this stuck spot and creates this mindset of, I have to.
And when you
It's my
think of where, like where he says a reference point is a standard for evaluation and comparison, the reference point is the standard that the child needs to reach in the education system, right? And then that leads into comparison, which, you know, there's no joy in comparison. We all know that. And then that leads into, like Paige just said, passive adults because of the system that Sheila talked about. Like the system is created, it's bit by bit by bit by bit. And if we take that idea and think about how that even applies to us in our business, some people just cannot get behind the concept of network marketing because it's not within a reference point. It's not within, this is how things should be done. You cannot put it into a 9 to 5 box. You can't predict and have certainty. It's unpredictable. It's you making the decisions. And that's where we're headed into with this chapter. Anybody else have something on that? Okay, guys, it can't just be me and Sheila talking.
word to the wise. We will start calling.
Oh, there's Paige.
This chapter blew me away, and then I really did start thinking of like, holy crap, I'm in the gap here and here and here and here and here, like in a really big way. It was a very eye-opening. It was a very eye-opening chapter to me. It was just like, yeah, I started thinking of all the comparisons. I started thinking of, because I went to school and like I went to trade school, right? And trade school was like, that's not a job, right? So, right, you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not a dentist, you're whatever, right? And it's like, I'm sorry, you want to what? Operate machinery? Well, that's not like a real job. And it's like, interesting. And so you get to the comparison and lots of like, okay, well, if it's not a real job, like, oh my gosh, my job's not good enough and I need to go back to school, or I need to do that anyway. And then you spiral and then it's a whole big thing. But anyway, it was very eye-opening, and it just like, it really encourages a lot of thoughts to change, right? And then yeah, anyway. Yeah. It just like just blew my mind, and then also encourages me to parent differently. And I see how I parent differently. Even if my kids are in public school, I show up and advocate differently
Yes.
for them. And
Yes.
and that is like, that's a whole other, like,
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing, right? So
Such a big point. Josie, it's interesting to watch the world. I don't know if the world, but maybe so more just in America, how trades are becoming looked at again with a different eye. Like an electrician is going to do very well financially, and they're not going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for school fees and tuition and stuff, right? And I feel like they're making a mark. People are. I watched a TikTok the other day on they did comparisons, exactly what Paige said, like, oh, that's not a real job. Like they had several students that had gone out to be a lawyer, doctor, and forget what the other one was. And then they had trades comparable. All the tradespeople made more money. All the tradespeople made more money and had less debt. Mike Rowe is so good. I've been loving his series. Okay, so if we're talking about measuring success against a reference point, progress must be concrete. A sense that we're making progress toward our goals makes us happy, but to truly get the feeling of progress, we need to base it on concrete facts. When we set goals, we must be specific so we know when they're accomplished. Usually a number was reached or an event took place. Those are our ranks. Those are point goals. Those are sponsoring enough people to get Christmas cash, right? That is like a concrete progress situation. In any domain or situation, success is always measured against a particular reference point. And so this is where we do this gain or gap, right? This is where we actually decide of which side we're going to be on. Being fixated on outside reference points puts you in the gap. So if that's all you're focusing on, it's just, I have to get more points. I have to, that's the gap. But if you're actually looking at being directed by your own internal reference points, strengthens being in the game. What have I already done? This is how far I've come. Okay, let's go. It creates a desire for more, right? Sheila, I'm going to hand it over to you because I'm going to go let the dogs out. This isn't working. I'm sorry. I think I need a taser at this point.
Well, we can't hear them if that makes you feel better.
No, they're in the garage. I'm not sure what they're destroying. I will be right back. They're going outside.
Like a bunch of naughty toddlers. Wild ones with no the social media part. That I really liked that. What do you guys think about that? That social media is designed to put people into the gap.
I thought that was crazy. Like and you see it when it's like written down and you read it and then you sit back and you think about social media. Excuse me, you see it. And I think unless you make a conscious effort to not use it that way or be designed that way or do you know what I mean? Like if you use it as a tool and you're put that conscious effort forward, then there you might have the upper hand a little bit. I'm not saying 100%, right? Because we do go on and we look at everybody's highlight reels and we see all the like pretty homes and all the whatevers. But yeah, very eye-opening. I think I think we do kind of have an upper hand a little bit if you're consciously aware of it, but there are so many times where you're just going and you're not consciously aware and you fall into the gap. Like it's scary, but it makes sense.
100%. I feel like I agree with you. You have to be very intentional. And it's usually in your lowest places where you're not intentional, and that's where you fall into it the easiest. Um, and I have people in my life that I know that are not working on growing personally, and they become incredible victims because of social media. Like those are the kind of people that should just not even be on social media because it ruins their lives. Like they live in this gap of comparison and victimhood because of social media. Love to hear what anybody else thinks of this. I know for myself, I have done this so much. It's like social media is designed for comparison. We did not have, I mean, I feel like with anything in life, it's a tool. It is the most incredible tool that we can utilize to learn right now. Instagram, TikTok, they are so loaded with information. But at the same time, you have to take so much of it with a grain of salt because everybody is a coach. Everybody knows something these days.
I have a story on that. I hope I can say it in 1 minute. I have a girl that is very wise in holistic health, has years of experience. She herself has gone through a lot of things, which has created, Penny, that's good that you're here. No worries. She has just learned a lot of stuff through experience, through just teaching herself, right? Because she needed help, so she was solution oriented. And she is someone that is easier to fall into. Instagram coaches, Instagram professionals, people sharing their profile and having a very good marketing coach, which makes them look very professional. And then when you sit down one-on-one with them, you find out they maybe have 2 or 3 years of experience, where here she was coming in with like 20 years of experience. And she was paying this person big money to teach her how to help her with her current situation and her issues. And then she explained this to me, and I said, do you know what your problem is? That person marketed really well and knows half of what you do. That's what your problem is. You're looking at what she's giving, saying that she's giving, and you have way more. Just because you don't market it that way doesn't mean that you don't know more. She's there on the same road you are, just behind you. And she was shocked. She was like, but she would like market it like that. Well, you could too. Everybody can. It's interesting how people, the discernment needs to be so high, right?
My stepmother, not my stepmother, my mother-in-law came and stayed with us for 2 weeks this summer. And it was eye-opening how much time she spends on social media. She's retired in her early 80s. Pretty much the entire day is spent just scrolling on her phone. And we were floored because from the time my son was a toddler, we trained him like, do you get so much time on social media and like, just on screen time?
Mm-hmm.
And, we've always been very good at getting him outside, like having balance. And even he was floored by how much time she spends. And a lot of it is, Facebook, and it's pointless. We're in the middle of doing things like I'm making supper, doing whatever. And she would just think that I have to see this cat video. And I'm busy right now trying to make your supper. And it was just unbelievable. And it's crazy how, unless you're aware of it, you don't realize how you get sucked in. And I love how being around like-minded people, like building this business, has taught me to really fine-tune those skills. Like I've always been trying to be really good at limiting my screen time myself. And when I first started on Facebook in 2006, which is an insanely long time ago, I tried to make it just about connecting with people, encouraging people. Like I have quite a few people from my church that just use it strictly for ministry, just for encouraging people. And I love how this has helped me fine tune exactly how I use my time on social media. And it's just, it really, like, I never had it explained to me the way it is in this chapter, how it's designed to put you in the gap. I thought that was really, really eye-opening.
And isn't it interesting? It affects all age demographics. Like you're talking about an 80-plus-year-old, whereas Sheila's little 4-year-old, 3-year-old will come, Mama, can I have some iPad time? Because she knows I might cave a little bit easier than what mom would, right? Like nobody is exempt. It's crazy, but it is designed to do that. But one thing that you said there was, we get to fine tune those things. Your self-awareness is going to be key in how you're going to either make it work for you or it'll work and take away from you. It's very interesting how, like, it almost gave me a perspective to step outside and look at my day and say, where is it sucking from me? And where am I using it for me?
Yeah, my husband has never been much of a reader because he has dyslexia. So my son and I will sit there and read in the evenings, and we'll just like sit quietly. And my husband's usually away for 2 weeks at a time because of his job. So my son and I get in this routine. At the house is quiet. It's just the two of us. We sit and read. Well, my husband doesn't read. So he'll sit there and just scroll mindlessly through the buy-sell trades on social media. And I've gotten to the point that I get so frustrated in my head. I've nicknamed his iPad his mistress because I feel like this is taking up way too much of your time and attention. But it really does make you realize how much time you spend on this thing and how it really changes your perspective of things.
Mm-hmm. And it's very easy. It's all Penny is saying, it's almost worse than the older generation. Yeah, they have the time. They're lonely, so it feels like they're interacting with something. So if we take that into like becoming self-determined, if we can see how social media is causing us to live in the gap, how can we, with our business, this is something I was thinking about last night again, with our business being largely social media, how can we watch that carefully, that it's not taking from you, but you're actually using it? Like that's something I really thought about last night. I was like, there's so many good things to being able to have an industry that can be built like this. Like us here, we could not get together today, this morning, if it wasn't for this. It's a huge bonus. Like there's so many relationships to be built. There's so many benefits that are projecting forward into each one of your families because we can sit down here, because we can connect, because we have this tool. It also causes us to live in the gap. And we get to.
I like how he goes on to saying the social dilemma is if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're really going to think about this in life as a whole, whatever it may be, whatever they're offering us, whatever it may be, if you're not paying for it, then you are part of the science. You are a part of whatever it is that they are doing. And it's like, yeah, that is so true. And it doesn't mean we just ditch and switch and we just get rid of everything. That's not what it means. I think it's like Mom said, the awareness is so key. Once you have the awareness of like, oh, that's what's happening. Oh, that's how this is affecting me. Oh, how can I now come to this and be like, approach it differently? How can I use this to my benefit where it does not, where I don't become the product? I don't want to be the product. Use it. I mean, it's like food. Let's use food. You can use it to your benefit and be good, and it's good for you. You can grow stronger and healthier, and or you end up being the product. You are the cookie. Like it's the same idea. We get to choose that.
This whole chapter had just so many pieces in there that was like very thought-provoking, right? Like Zig Ziglar is, I don't know, like probably the oldest network marketing coach ever. Your input determines your outlook. It literally is, again, over and over, what you focus on grows. What you focus on grows. And so many times you come back to that and you see like how I am using social media is how it's going to be. If I change my outlook of how I use it, then it won't be that way. Your input determines your outlook determines your output, and your output determines your future. It's a little bit of a tongue twister there, and you kind of have to think it through the way that he's saying it. But literally, what you focus on grows, because what you're focusing on is what's going to happen in your future. And it's sometimes it's stupid simple. It's almost annoyingly simple. And yet when you look at where did it talk about the subtle slide? It's a gradual, slight, imperceptible change in your own behavior. This is where he talks about being the product and the perception that is the product. The more you're subtly influenced by externals, the more in the gap you will be. This is where you sit down and use social media as a comparison tool. Scrolling and like, this is where when you're coaching someone to start sharing about their lives, to share plexus. People want real people sharing. People want authentic people sharing their lives. They want to be inspired. Everybody's looking to someone else to be inspired. And then they're scrolling and they're looking for inspiration. And they come across this account and they're like, this girl, she's got it together. Look at her. She's doing all the things that I want to do. Look at her chicken coop. It's so clean. Look at her dogs. They're so well behaved. Actually, they're not. It's how you perceive it. And so if that's how you're going to be thinking, then you'll be in the gap. Whereas if you're scrolling and you're like, man, I bet she took that picture right after she cleaned the coop, and I bet those dogs never sit that nice because, man, think in the gap. Think of what they need, of what you can offer, right? Yes. The amount of perfection that people can put on social media blows my brain. I cannot. Like you'll see my zoo every time I sit down, and it's just it is what it is. But the
But
bottom part, sorry, go ahead.
society is starved for realism, like for some reality. Like they just want, because when you have that level of perfectionism, I mean, I love following some of these accounts just as much as anybody else. I think they're beautiful, and it does take a lot of like, for some of these women, it's their creative outlet, right? It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of like dedication, but and then I can enjoy that because I know I'm not going to compare myself to it. That's not even attainable. And for one, I don't want that life. And that I know that's not their life. Like there's no way that's their life in real life. If it is, they are absolutely miserable. But I think that people are so, without even realizing it, they are just looking for somebody that they can actually relate to. And so for us to show up as just us, that is the most powerful thing we can do because they want somebody who can just be their friend. They don't want to have to compare themselves again to the next person. They want somebody that they can be like, "Oh, wait, your kid does that too?" Like it's the little things that I post sometimes, like the fact that Sadie will never finish a meal ever, ever, and that we were sitting at
She's
the
at my
island,
house.
that we're sitting at the island at 9 p.m. in the evening finishing her supper so that she can have a snack. Like it's those little things that people like because they're like, "Oh, wait, my kids do that too." Right? It's like real stuff. Of course, they
Paige,
always do it.
yeah. And literally, she doesn't always, but Paige, that's crazy, right? Like, it's so nuts how the other day I posted something about how much more of a relaxed grandma I am. And then I, it bothers me that it wasn't like that when the kids were little, but you had to learn it first. You had to learn it first in order to get here, right? And so if you think about your vision in your head, I have certain, I don't know, I don't want to call them pet peeves, but your vision in your head of how you like things to be, they just become kind of your habits and then you want them to be that way. I hate going to bed with dirty dishes and the dishwasher full of clean dishes because then I have to get up to that junk in the morning. And I hate doing the dishwasher. I don't know why. I just hate doing the dishwasher. It's just one of my pet peeves, right? And the other day I stood up and I said to myself, like, why does this bother me? Why don't I just do it and get it over it? It literally takes 10 minutes. What have I created in my brain that this is an issue to me every time I come up against it? It's I that created it. It's my gap thinking. Just do it, throw the dirty stuff in there, and you're done. We make it hard for ourselves, right? But I want to get to this point here. Page 38 in the bottom, where he talks about living in the gap. No wonder suicide and addiction rates are skyrocketing among teens and adolescents because the majority of their lives are being spent comparing to others, and even by teachers, parents, and even themselves, right? If you think of sports teams, the worst people in that arena are the parents, in my opinion. And it's devastating to watch because there's very few parents that are there that really encourage the kid to just be a team player, do what you got to do. You're good at what you do. That's enough, right? It's the comparison among the parents that creates the rivalry in the game, right? And then if you think about how these kids show up on social media, just the other day we talked about how I grew up in the 80s. I'm so glad we didn't have social media. There's no record of my teenage years. These kids can never live anything down. And so that still gets you, it's like bringing up the past all the time, never being forgiven, never being forgotten, right? If you think about how heavy that can get, it would be awful to live in. And so last night I had a conversation with a friend who had a son who attempted suicide, and it was very, very bad. And I thought of this, and they actually got down to the bottom of it, and it was because his phone was taken away. Like it sat with me until late in the night. I was like, it was so heavy of how this 15-year-old thought that his phone was his life more than the value of his whole life. Like, I can't even put words into that. Like that, it just, yeah, it was really big. So if we can shift that, your happiness as a person is dependent on what you measure yourself against. So how can we shift that and teach our kids to measure themselves against not social media, not comparison, not what the world says you are? We definitely need to shift that, but I think we're the first example.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like, sorry guys, I haven't read the chapter. That's why I'm taking it all in. Tuning in as best I can today. Just got parked now. So, but with our kids too, we find that making space for feelings and emotions that I feel get stuffed down when they just focus on their phones and all the things. So our kids are just as guilty as the rest. So even just the other day, I said to Peyton, he'd come home and right away grabbed his Xbox because we store it in our bedroom. So he grabbed it and hadn't even hardly said hello. We didn't even talk. And I was like, whoa, 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 what do we need that for? He's like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And I said, well, not before we connect first and have a little conversation. And so then he actually ended up staying up and we chatted for a long time and talked about his future because he's in grade 12. So all the things. But I agree with everything that everyone has said and how important it is to make space for those emotions, right? For teenagers and especially for adults, we have to focus and we have to process all of that. But I can totally relate to the gap and how easily you can get fallen into it. It's like unbelievable. And being intentional has been so helpful to me in terms of being able to get in, get out. Because I do feel like I'm in the gap whenever I am scrolling. Scrolling is the gap. And I can see how it's designed that way because it keeps people basically not doing the things that would make the big changes and things like that. And it's safe and it's easy to just stay safe, and not be putting yourself out there and kind of being, a little bit more inspiring. Like I try to always make sure that when I'm on social media, I want to inspire, I want to motivate, I want to try to connect with people essentially. But I totally get it. And it's just resonating with me big time. And social media is like, wow, wow, wow. It's just,
Exactly.
it's insane, right? And so we actually just had this conversation with our kids the other day, the two oldest ones anyways, because Ethan still loves us and hangs out with us and doesn't seem to be as connected to his phone as the older ones. But it's just like, we need to connect with you. And it's important that we do that every day, right? And like every day. And then I kind of even joked and I said, well, there's nothing, like it's not too much to ask that Dad and I expect to have your every waking moment when you're at home. You can hang out with us the whole time. You don't need your phone or anything else. And they're just like, are you for real? And it's like, and I was teasing, but I said, well, no, I'm being a little exaggerated. But I said, connecting and talking and like actually having those social skills is super, super, super important. I know other families who've struggled with like they don't even see their kids because they're literally in their rooms. They come home and they're in their rooms. And like Rodney's one cousin said that he didn't see him for a good 2 weeks. And he's the same age as Peyton, my oldest. And we just looked at each other like, oh my goodness. Right. And so that's why like dinners at the table and like connecting with our family like is so important. And so it was just interesting that even Peyton realized, yeah, Veda told me that you guys are kind of upset that we don't hang out with you anymore and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, we don't expect you to hang out with us, but we expect that connection. And it's important that, we aren't just sitting on our phones all the time. The time is a little bit much right now, so yeah, I know I went on a little bit, but that's kind of my take on it. I can't wait to dive into the book. I've got the book at home. But I can't wait to kind of catch up on those 2 chapters and even let them sink in even more. So love you all.
You made such a good point there, Trina. And I think to teach our kids that we expect that connection to be from both sides, right? But I marvel, and I'm going to speak as an older parent, but I marvel at how many parents give their kids a phone because I get it. They're getting in a car, they're leaving by themselves, they now have a driver's license. Where's your kid? Right? We all want to know that they're going to be safe. Okay, well then she needs a phone. But then they kind of give it over and they're like, well, she needs a phone, so I guess this is just what we get. It's like, no, you are the parent. You get to decide where that phone goes. Like you get to, because you are the mom. And people are so scared of being not liked by their kids. That's a whole nother topic. I'm not going to go there. That's a whole nother book. But it's interesting how then they fall into our kids are on the phone in their rooms by themselves and we don't even get to see them. You get to decide that. You go open that room and say, honey, I want the phone, and your door's open. You're actually coming upstairs with me. Right? Like, why are we scared of doing that? It's going to pay off so much. The story on page 39, I think I've seen, that's a good idea, Paige. I think I've seen this girl on social media, Sandy McCoy. She's the girl that does the before, how she was treated when she was morbidly obese, and then how she's treated now that she's a beautiful woman. Sorry, wrong term, but now that she's lost hundreds of pounds, right? Very different how society perceives her, and that she still gets criticized by all the excess skin that she has and how she perceives that criticism, right? Every now and again, I'll do a tester post, putting something out there from my perspective of what I get criticized for. And then I watch the comments, and it's so interesting that people are always shocked that we get criticized for what we do. We get criticized in life for whatever we do. People are always going to have an opinion. Doesn't matter if it's Trina taking her kids to hockey, if it's me, making food for my dogs, if it's Sheila homeschooling, if it's whatever it is, there will be someone with an opinion. And the faster that you learn this, the better you will be able to see it's going to be there all the time. It's never going to go away. How you will take it on is going to make the difference of you being in the gap and being hurt or having feelings and allowing it to take you down, or actually being in the gain and saying, oh, interesting opinion. On we go. We've got a mission. And so she also said there used to be a time where I based my success on what I thought others wanted from me. I felt like I was always letting everyone down, especially when it came to losing weight. It wasn't until I decided to make a list of what I actually wanted in life that I was finally able to succeed on the goals I set for myself. Had nothing to do with anybody else, right? Nothing to do with anybody else. Today, I tracked my calories, cleaned the house, did my knee exercises, went for a walk, and played some kickball. To some people, this may not sound like a successful day, but to me, it is. Success is measured by you. No one else can set your happy meter. Why do we expect to get on social media and decide that, okay, someone here is going to set my happy meter of whether I'm happy or not, right? And so the questions in the bottom there of defining your success are the reference points you measure yourself against external or internal. Where are we using the reference points of what's going to make us happy? Are they coming from external sources, like she said, like it had to depend on her weight loss, on how people perceived her, if she was going to be happy or not? Or are they going to be internal because of what you know you should be doing for yourself? How often do you compare yourself to others? These are good things to sit down and write down, because I feel like there's going to be more in these questions than what we think there is. How much time do you spend on social media? I think this is probably pertaining more so to someone who doesn't build a business on social media, but more someone who just uses it to numb, to scroll, to just kind of, blow by? And are you self-determined and free?
I'm
And
just
as a
gonna,
quick sorry, go ahead.
I was just a relatable story. But I was thinking of when she said there used to be a time where I based my success on what I thought others wanted from me. I had that same experience, and it is like ingrained in my head. But one lady probably 3 years ago asked, "Oh, so what are you renovating next?"
Mhm.
And from that question alone, I thought, "Oh my gosh, people want to see me renovate my house. I'm not renovating it. I have to be renovating it. I have to be doing a new project for people to like me, to follow me, to whatever." And one question, what are you renovating next? And I didn't have an answer because I didn't have a project. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't bring value to the internet unless I have a home project. And it took, like, I know that sounds so goofy saying it out loud right now. But it took like a hot minute to be like, Paige, calm down. You're fine. Right? Do you know what I mean? And like just because I don't have a project going on doesn't mean I'm unhappy. But anyway, it took a little bit to work through those thoughts of like, oh my goodness, people only want to see my renovations. And I mean, maybe so they can criticize that I'm painting a bathroom black, but whatever, like I'm here for it.
That relates to people who feel like their story isn't relevant anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have a story and we've told it so many times, so then we think like everybody's heard my story. It's not relevant anymore. I'm just not, like, I need a new story is what people start thinking, because they feel like it's not relevant anymore. And if you think about it, I remember a couple years ago telling Barb this, because she wasn't clear on what she should be sharing. And I said to her, Barb, you have so much dang experience. You have lived so many years and done things that nobody else has ever done. And those things are all part of your story. Share from your wisdom, because it's already there. And she's like, well, everybody knows that. No, the whole world is waiting for you to tell them. And it's interesting how we feel like someone making a comment like that makes us feel like, oh, I have to find something new. Oh, there's got to be something more. No, you are more. Like, there's so much more in there still that still needs to be shared. That's being self-determined. That's seeing things for, that's really good, Paige. Appreciate progress first. I love that list of 10, because this whole piece, okay, for you guys that don't have the book, Dean Jackson is a marketing expert and entrepreneur. 20 years ago, Dean had an aha moment about the inherent problem with seeking success. Specifically, he concluded that using the phrase, I will be successful when, led people to chasing the wrong forms of success and never actually getting the life that they wanted. Dean decided to flip the question, put the success in the here and now, and he asked himself, I know I'm being successful when, and he came up with a list of 10 items. And it completely flips you from the gap to the gain, like just like a 180. And he had several, I'm not going to read them all, but he had several things. Number one, I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today? And he would like to, my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. He's making more money than he needs. These are 10 things that he was basing his own success by, right? And so the list reflects Dean's personal success criteria. His measuring stick is his own creation. He is self-determined. He references his list regularly, especially when presented with opportunities or when trying to make decisions. If it's clear that an opportunity would take away from or is in conflict with any of Dean's 10 principles, he says no. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Sheila. That's his list of 10. And this is where it teaches us to not look at what I don't have, but to look at what I have. And then to determine from there, I know I'm being successful when, and be honest with yourself. No one else can define the success for you. Defining your own success criteria is how you become self-determined. This is where people get out of the box. This is where they learn to not rely on other people telling them when, where, and how, but showing up. And the other day, there was a couple of questions in the gold chat for those of you, I think you're all in there. And it was interesting how people immediately ask, where do I share this? What do I do? And then when Eva answered and she said, I'm looking for people that are self-reflective and that are going to be not asking the how, but just learning in the doing. Learning in the doing, right? And so this list, the main point is that you have your own success criteria to guide how you spend your time and what you do. Continually refine and improve your success criteria. So if you are making a list of 10 things and you title that list, you are being successful when, and you make 10 points, what are your points going to be?
I like this because what my consider success is going to be what Trina considers success, or what Penny considers success. And that's why it's so important. I mean, as we go on, we'll also see Lee's 6 filtering questions because he has his own ways of defining success. And that's the most important thing. Like, we can often go to people, what did you do? Well, yeah, we can take advice from them, but at the end of the day, we have to fit it to us and what works for us. One of my ways that I know that I'm having success right now is that I let myself sleep. That is a success thing for me. Like, that I don't force myself to I let myself go to bed at a good time and I wake up at a good time. Like, that to me is a success thing right now. And it may not be for everybody else, but it has helped me heal a lot in the last year, making sure I have enough sleep. That's one of my success criterias.
That's really good, because knowing that it's going to be different for everybody, and we often see this when we see someone else having good momentum in their business and things are hopping on their team, other people are going to come and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, there's always this perception that there's something magic that I'm missing. I'm missing what someone else knows. What do I not know? What am I missing is such a common question in our business. And so very often we'll hear someone else's method of success. And over the years, I've learned and trained myself to listen. It's never one size fits all, for sure. I've trained myself to listen and watch for that person's energy, basically, and see of why they are having momentum in their business. And it's usually just several things. Number one, it's their belief. They just decided one day, I'm doing this. I'm done with questioning this. I'm just doing it. It's their willingness to fail and just taking action. And regardless of what they are doing, if they're posting 50 times a day, if they're not posting once a week, that's not the point. That's not the point at all. It's those 3 things. It's your belief, the willingness to do the thing, and the willingness to fail. And so I think in this, is it in this chapter or in the next chapter is where he talks about failing as well. So Sheila, can you copy the 6 filtering questions? Because I feel like we should do this exercise after the call, and be interesting to share, even in our chat. You don't have to share all your 10 things, but just some takeaways on how your filtering affects of what you actually put down, of what determines your success, right? I like the thing where he said, I wear my watch for curiosity only. It's so interesting how driven we are by the clock on the wall. And I never ever understood this concept until I got to know Wes and Sherry Harbridge. Sherry did not grow up with a clock at all. Never. To me, that concept was unfathomable. I think my life started on the clock. Somebody said, hurry up and get born. And then it's hurry up, the bus is coming. Get ready, you don't have time. Run, the bus is here. And then it's like after school, get in the garden. Come on, let's get this done. It's almost supper time. It's always measuring up against the clock. And I lived my life like that, right? I had a job when I had babies. And so it's like, hurry up, get this baby nurse. I gotta go. Hurry up, sleep. You gotta get up in the morning. We even hurried sleep. Like, it's nuts how you think about how your life is revolved around the clock. And then I met Sherry, and it just about drove me bonkers in the beginning. And then I stopped and I thought, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing to be able to live your life and to be productive and to have a very full quality life without being concerned about what the time on the wall is. And it takes a lot still for me to not be driven by the clock. So that is something that really stood out to me, because I feel like you would give people better things. You would give people better things of yourself. You would look at things differently if you weren't driven by the clock.
I feel like there has to be
A balance.
yes, because I mean, mom knows this. I grew up with a father who would leave me behind if I wasn't ready on time. I have been left behind a few times, and you learn real quickly to be ready on time. Otherwise, you're not going. Because and I have to agree with him, especially now as a parent. If you are late to something, you are using up somebody else's precious time. And I don't agree with that. And so if I have said I'm going to be somewhere at a certain time, I will do my best to be there at that time because their time is valuable too. And so I do feel like this has to have a healthy balance where I use this criteria to say no to things
Mhm.
if they don't fit in and align with my values. Because if I'm saying yes to something, I don't want to be there, and then I show up late, I'm being disrespectful to their time and their resources. But if I have said no because no, that's not going to fit into my time, and I just don't show up at all, that's valuing my time.
Yeah.
So I feel like there has to be
Both
this,
sides.
the both
Definitely
sides
both
thing.
sides. Yeah.
There has to be the both sides thing. Respecting myself as well as respecting others.
Yeah. If you look at those filtering questions in the chat there, and you think about the things that you say yes to, sometimes we say yes to things that we resent because they're expected of us. And there's going to be a lot of things in this business. This is something I thought back on. There's going to be a lot of things in building this business that are going to come up against you that you are possibly expected to say yes to, but it's taking away from the time that you would want to invest into building this business. And so for me, these questions would have been hugely beneficial. And I know that they were very much taught in coaching and very much taught in when we were setting our goals, is to look at how are you giving your time to other people, right? We're on the topic of time right now, but it really applies to a lot of other things in life as well. And so even that number one question of, is this opportunity, person, expense, adventure, experience, relationship, commitment, etc., aligned with my values? If the answer to this first question is no, then he doesn't proceed to ask himself the remaining 5 questions. If, however, the answer to this first question is yes, then you continue to filter. And it's just basically a process to become very self-aware of what is going to keep you on the path to the right direction, on the path to your goals. Very much based on your values, yes.
I feel like in order to answer this, you have to know what your values are.
Mhm.
Before you even can start with these 6 questions, you have to be able to be like, these are my values. And then now you can answer the questions. Otherwise, you really can't. Because if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, yeah, that's a value, that's a value, that's a value, but I'm very vague about it,
Mhm.
I need to really like pinpoint what are my values.
Going back to your list of 10, what actually you determine what makes you successful. Ideals as an inspiration. The best way to look at your ideals is as an infinite source of inspiration for creating goals. We are all like movie makers, using our entire memory and imagination as raw material for casting a never-ending series of pictures out in front of us. So using your filtering system to go further, faster. Use this rule if you're often overcommitted or too scattered. If you're not saying, hell yeah, about something, say no. When deciding whether to do something, if you feel anything less than wow, that would be amazing, absolutely, then say no. So if we would use that filter against the things that you show up for in life, and sometimes we show up resentfully because, wow, I better show up, right? It would very much determine of where your time would go. I love the next example. The British rowing team had not won a gold medal since 1912. By all measures, they didn't have a good rowing program. And then something changed. In anticipation of the 2000 Sydney Olympics, the team developed a useful filtering process that changed everything. They went from being an average rowing team to winning Olympic gold. They developed one question filtering response to every single decision that they made. This one question allowed them to measure every situation, decision, and obstacle and not to get derailed. We get derailed so often, right? About the things that are happening in our life because it's a busy world. Things are coming at us left, right, and center. Not to get derailed where most people do. With every decision or opportunity, every member of the team ask themselves, will this make the boat go faster? I loved the way that was presented because it's such a simple analogy that you can apply to anything. Example, you get invited to a late night party the night before training. Will that make the boat go faster? If the answer is no, the decision is no. Tempted to eat a donut? Will that make the boat go faster? Probably not. It's an extra donut. The British rowing team used this single measure as their decision filter to quickly escalate their unity, skills, conditioning, and training. They destroyed their competition and won gold. I have done this in certain seasons of my business. And then every time you look back and you see yourself that you have stopped, then I wonder, why did I stop? Why did I stop? If you're filtering everything in your life towards your goal, wouldn't you get there a lot faster by eliminating all those stumbling blocks, by eliminating all the things that are standing in your way, that are popping you up and hitting you in the face? Will this make the boat go faster? That's a really good expression or example, Penny. Can't find my words today. Burnout is the byproduct of not saying no, of giving way too much, of allowing other people to use your time, of showing up for things that do not fuel your passion, of living for expectations, overexerting yourself. So if you would have had the question, does this make the boat go faster? Would you have hit burnout? Get very good at saying no to anything that misaligns with your success criteria. And as you do, you'll be shocked at the confidence and momentum you quickly build. Will this move the needle forward? Yeah, exactly. And then to know where you are going. Your destination has to be clear.
I often think of this. So for anybody on here that is a Christian or follows Jesus, we often think we have to give everything. We often think that we have to be completely selfless. And the most selfless person on earth, Jesus, had boundaries. When they said they were going to kill him in Nazareth, did he go back? No, he didn't. Do you know what I mean? If he needed time away, he took time away. He went and spent time up on top of the mountain by himself. He was
Exactly.
still human. And so we get to live by that example as well. We get to say no. because if we are not protecting, my devotion a while back was so eye-opening. Our time is one of our most valuable resources. And there will always be people in our lives that will demand that time and believe that they deserve it, which then takes away from the people who truly do need it. And so we have to be wise about what we're saying no to and what we're saying yes to, and align it with our values so that we can serve those who are truly waiting for us. It is not wrong to say no.
It's actually very powerful to say no. Very powerful. And I think it goes against the grain of people pleasing, which is why it's so very hard for so many people, right? It goes against the grain of, well, I'm here to love and serve. Yes, you are, to the right people that God puts in front of you, like Penny said, right? And so, quick evaluation of our chapter takeaways. I love this chapter. I feel like this whole book is so applicable. It's just hits me up between the eyes. Are your success criteria focused on the outcomes that you currently want? This is something that you can journal about. What's a simple filter that you can create to assess every decision that you make? Example, will it make the boat go faster? What is one thing you can apply this filter to in the next 3 hours? If we start actually looking at it in 3-hour increments, if I do this, will that make the boat go faster? Imagine how your thinking would change, right? And so to take away a little bit from this chapter, external reference points make it impossible to feel successful because no matter what you've done, the success criteria are always moving. It's like there's always more month at the end of the money. That's the theory. Like you've never ever arrived. You're always on that hedonic treadmill, right? Whereas if you flip to thinking in the gain, it'll stop the treadmill. It'll make you determine of where you are and make you determine of where you're going. Getting out of the gap and into the gain means you've made yourself your own reference point. It is you. It is where you are right now. The gap means your life is determined by someone or something external. It's that people-pleasing thing. It's that showing up for others, giving your time where it's not supposed to be given. The gain means you're living a self-determined life, showing up where it's most important and most valuable, where God puts you, basically. When your reference point is internal, you make the final call on what success means to you, regardless of what other people think. When your reference point is internal, happiness and success are always right here and right now.
Penny made such a good point. If you're doing things that are not meant for you, you're taking them away from somebody who is called to do that, who's going to receive that who needs to receive that blessing, or who it's their gift. If we think we do everything, it's almost like this mentality of I'm so much better, or I can't be done right unless I do it, or even the nobody's going to do it if I don't do it.
Yeah.
Said that one many times in my life when it comes
and it
to
reminds me of how we build our teams. I don't have every gift. I lack in so many things, and so I need all these other people with amazing gifts to show up and bring those gaps, to fill in those pieces of the pie, in order that we can as a whole be more powerful, be more impactful. That's why I just sometimes I'm just like blown away at how our compensation plan works in Plexus, of how our team unity and our culture works in Plexus, and how God blesses that, because it's so very clear that when people are unified, of how powerful they are. Because we're not living in the things of I don't have those things and so I can't deliver that. If I don't have it, I'm going to ask Penny. I'm going to ask Holly. Oh, I know that Josie is really good at that. I don't have to be. I'm only going to show up where I'm actually good at. It's so freeing to do that and to find people that want to be in that pie with you. ELL. Penny, you should be talking. It's making me laugh. It's true. It is very, very true. We're 10 minutes over again, and I could really just go on because it's been so good. But I'm going to stop the recording there.